don't know what if you. I don't know if this is Brave New World. I don't know if this is 1984, George Orwell. I don't know what this is exactly, but this is what's coming. You're right. So you already know we don't live in a democracy. The Princeton study proved that. Okay, the bottom 80% of Americans have absolutely zero impact on legislation. There's a new bill, a Nevada bill, would allow tech companies to create their own governments. This is from the AP, February 3rd. This is a real story. Nevada bill would allow tech companies to create their own governments. Tech companies can create their own governments, just not Native Americans. Nevada bill would allow tech companies to create governments. Because who hasn't wondered what would happen if we let stoned college kids make laws? Hey, which Google grade are you in? I pledge allegiance to the gigabyte. There's more. CARSON CITY. Planned legislation to establish new business areas in Nevada would allow technology companies to effectively form separate local governments. This is real. It's a real thing. I'm not making this up. Planned legislation to establish new business areas in Nevada would allow technology companies to effectively form separate local governments. The proposed zones would permit companies with large areas of land to form governments carrying the same authority as counties, including the ability to impose taxes, form school districts and courts, and provide government services. This sounds like a joke. This sounds like some kind of a joke. I mean, hopefully they'll build their new governments on old atomic testing sites. Hopefully. This is real. The plan would bring in new businesses at the forefront of groundbreaking technologies without the use of tax abatements or other publicly funded incentive packages that previously helped Nevada attract companies like Tesla Inc. And plus, if you ever feel like you want to just get back to normalcy, you can just drive your car to Las Vegas, a normal city. Zone requirements would include applicants owning at least 78 square miles of miles, and companies would have at least $250 million and plans to invest an additional $1 billion in their zones over 10 years. I can't think of anything else we could be doing with that money. I cannot. The zones would initially operate with the oversight of their local location counties, but would eventually take over county duties and become independent governmental bodies. We will let the machines in, and soon the machines will rule. The zones would have 3-member supervisor boards with the same powers as county commissioners. The businesses would maintain significant control over board membership. Wow. Wow. That's from the AP. That's the real thing. That is unbelievable. So there you go. Get ready for your dystopian future. You're not even going to have a government anymore. It's going to be a corporate board that runs. I mean, that's basically what we live in anyway. Honestly, that's basically what we live in. We live in a country with a government that is completely run by corporate interests. Completely. Not a little. Why do you think we don't have health care? That's because our government isn't run for the people. It's run for the corporate interest. That's why. Why do you think we don't have a $15 minimum wage? Okay. Why do you think there's fracking pipes underneath this country? Okay. I can go on. Why do you think we spend more money than the next 45 zillion countries put together on bombs? Why do we do that? So we already are. This country already is run by a corporation, but this is literally going to cut out the middleman of an actual government. They're just cutting out the middleman, which is, I guess, more efficient actually. Because right now it's a little clumsy. You got to get your corporate guy. He's got to hire the lobbyist. He gives the lobbyist a bunch of money. The lobbyist gives the politician a bunch of money. The politician then gives it to a news network, and then they put commercials on, and then he gets elected. So that's how that all works. So they're just going to cut out the government guy. And then they don't even have to give money to get elected to the news media. They just appoint them. This is awesome. So they're just cutting out the middleman. You don't hit no government now. It just goes right from Raytheon will be running this county in Nevada. We'll have Google running this. Tesla will be running this county. And if you have a problem, you fill out a form and send it to the corporate manager. This is a real thing. Okay, it's great to see you, Max. Thanks for making time. Were you able to catch this story?
I was. I always thought that corporations were people, and now we learn they're governments. So that's kind of my takeaway.
I mean, whether that happens or not, the fact that people that feel comfortable enough to propose something like that is chilling, right? Like, how far have we come or fallen? Like, do you find this chilling?
Well, I do, and stupid. I mean, monumentally stupid. And it's sad that it's a Democratic governor proposing it in one of the most heavily unionized states, Nevada. People flock from around the country to get unionized blue-collar jobs in Reno and Las Vegas. And it's ridiculous that, this Democratic governor is proposing what would be the wet dream of Ludwig von Mises and like the Austrian economics school. I don't even think the Austrian economics school would support this because it's kind of like government guiding these government-free autonomous zones. But the stupidity of it is, I mean, if you create these towns, which have to be created in the desert, it's like some like big tech, like Mark Zuckerberg plays the role of the Bundy family and takes over land. But where is the water going to come from? Where will the natural gas for heating come from? Or, maybe they'll have to ship in propane, but where will the public resources come from? It's going to come from those blue collar folks working real jobs in Las Vegas and the main cities of Nevada. Their tax dollars are basically going to pay for these towns to exist just to bring in what apparently is the future economy of this dystopian country, which is big tech. Is ridiculous. So I don't even see how that's economically viable at all. It sounds completely non-productive. And they're going to be able to run their own school systems. I mean, that completely erodes the state's public school system, which it's like a backdoor for the privatization of public schools. It's a total Trojan horse. And it's just absolute abandonment of the social contract by a Democratic governor.
Again, the Democratic Party, it's a one-party rule, folks. We have one party.
Well, Democrats are obviously more in line with big tech.
With tech, yeah.
And honestly, I mean, I read the story. I kind of like laughed about it, and this is the first time I'm coming back to it, so I haven't really done any research on this governor's relation. I forget what his name is, like Sislak or something. What his relationship is with tech, but I mean, you can see big tech bending over backwards for the Democratic committee chairs in Congress to censor whatever websites they don't like. So it's obvious that's where the power center is. The Republicans have always traditionally been funded by the extraction industries, the, mining, coal, oil, and the Democrats have, taken ever since they, in the 80s and 90s when they really started turning their backs on labor, they were raking in the bucks from the financial industry, Goldman Sachs, and now big tech is a real source of Democratic funding. Kamala Harris, her whole career was fueled by big tech. I mean, she wouldn't exist without them and pro-Israel money. And so that's the real center of power now. And, apparently they're just going to take the mask off and say, we're not just going to, control government from behind the scenes. We are going to be the government.
The zones would have 3-member supervisory boards. What does that remind me of? Oh, yeah, that's right. The TPP, which is going to create a panel of 3 corporate lawyers that could award unlimited sums to corporations, including for loss of future expected profits to be paid by American taxpayers. I remember that. That was in the TPP. Businesses would maintain significant control over board membership. Again, you mean what we already have? That's what I'm saying. We already have. Corporations are controlling everything, but they're just going to be doing it more out in the open. I don't think Americans will stand for this. I hope not. We'll see.
They're standing for a lot right now. They're actually just kind of on their knees.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of education privatization, where these charter schools would set up their own parallel school boards that wouldn't have public control. And the only people who would have input would be parents who won the lottery to be part of the charter school. So they were basically weakening municipal control, and the public was paying for it. And they were doing what's called co-locating, where basically the charter schools, they couldn't get space. So they would actually come in and take over part of a public school, and then they were backed by hedge funds. And so that their part of the public school would start to look really good, and the public school would be dilapidated. This guy, I forget his name, he was the head of KIPP, which is one of the biggest charter school rackets in the country, completely backed by hedge fund money. He compared co-location to Israel and Palestine. He said, our side tends to look more like Israel and theirs looks like Palestine, because when we come in, we bring all the money in. And it's not just because, and it's just like, it is an apt analogy, because Israel's exploiting Palestinian labor and land, and they're exploiting public schools. They're exploiting public money. I mean, you can see the same dynamic with us, city dwellers paying hundreds of millions of dollars for some ultra wealthy Republican hedge funder who owns a professional sports team to have an arena in the middle of the city. And like the Oklahoma City Thunder, Oklahoma City, if there are any young journalists who really want to make an impact, move to Oklahoma City and cover all the corruption there, because there's no media. The media has been just completely destroyed by corporations. They have like one monotonous voice that's in favor of corporations. The whole city is controlled by Aubrey McClendon, who owns Chesapeake Energy. And he got the public to pay like $400 million for a new stadium for the Oklahoma City Thunder. So last year in November, there was a giant rainstorm, and it knocked out the city's electricity, not just for like a few hours, but actually for days and days, because they hadn't retrofitted the electricity grid or repaired the electricity grid. And actually on election day, a lot of the polling places had to shut down because they couldn't power these new voting machines. That's the kind of world we're living in. And so this kind of really distills it all perfectly, where they just take the mask off and say, hey, we're going to just let the corporations openly be governments instead of just controlling the government and having us pay for them to be there.
It's stunning. It's stunning. I mean, Dylan Radigan said on this show in May that he predicted America will just, without a real revolution or an uprising, that we're most likely just going to slide into being like Brazil. And I think he's right about that. I don't know. Well, we'll see. Hey, everybody, this is the part where I tell you where all our live shows are, but there aren't any. And then this is why I tell you to join our premium program and get extra content, but nobody's got a fucking job. So just enjoy the video.